This week, I made the decision to go ahead and play through No More Heroes 2 again. I played through it like in 2022, like 21, when just before No More Heroes 3 came out. I was really excited for the game at the time, so I went ahead and replayed like all of the first two No More Heroes games. I played 1, I played 2, and then I played 3. Like great games all around. Really enjoyed my time with them. And 2 was like has always been the one that I've considered like the weakest of the series. It's the one that I think has like the worst cutscene direction, the worst gameplay loop, terrible level design, just all these issues. Content's not as great, like the boss fights aren't as good. Like there are all these issues that kind of weigh No More Heroes down. No More Heroes 2 down specifically compared to the others, right? And I've always maintained that. I've always talked about that. However, like playing No More Heroes at 10, No More Heroes 2 again, after playing No More Heroes 3, I actually have a newfound appreciation for it. Like you really start to appreciate the fact that Travis's character arc of going from being an assassin who just kills people for fun to being a legit hero is like built up on, right? Like going into No More Heroes 3 where Travis is like unapologetically like going out like fighting aliens specifically to save the planet, not for his personal gain, but to help those around him and protect Shinobu, protect Bad Girl, protect like all those he cares about, right? Like, no More Heroes 3, like everything that happens in No More Heroes 3 was built up in No More Heroes 2. The entire reason Travis becomes a hero, because the reason he becomes who he is in 3 is because of what happens in 2. Because of what happens to Bishop, because of his development of his relationship with not just Sylvia, but with Shinobu, with Henry, with like with all the characters in 2, right? Like he realizes how much that like Bishop means to him. Like Mike is like revealed to be a correspondent to Bishop. Like he's the one who gives Travis the Rose Nasty in 2, right? You have like these arcs, these characters that are like that lead surprisingly well into No More Heroes 3. Like, particularly when it comes to Travis and his character development, right? Like, Travis, very much so, I think this is something that a lot of people don't pick up on, is a character that organically develops and grows as the series go on. You get, like, the midlife crisis in Travis Strikes Again. You get, like, the maturing into a hero in 2. You have, like, the character establishing moment in 1. And then you have, like, the grand finale in 3 where like he becomes the superhero that like he never actually thought he could be, right? Like you get that monologue in 1 where like he legit tells himself that like yeah, there's nothing here for me, but there's nothing here for me, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And yet somehow, in spite of everything, in spite of everyone like telling him that he's going to be a failure, that he's going to be doomed to be killed by another assassin, he keeps winning. He keeps moving on with his life. Like he acquires a beautiful wife, 2 children. He acquires like friends and confidants and people who like support him. Like he becomes a better person because of his endeavors in No More Heroes in this sense. Like it is a really interesting situation because in a lot of ways Travis himself does not realize that he as a person is changing. And as a result, like it's not obvious to the player that Travis is necessarily a different character. Like it's so easy to like say the character is simply out of character or that like he wouldn't do this or whatever. Like so many people thought that like No More Heroes 2 like did wasn't really building up to anything. That like the whole revenge is bad thing wasn't going to amount to much. That we would just go back to like killing people by the next game or whatever. But like instead we got some shocking character development, right? We got like Bad Girl being returned to being revived from the dead. We got like Travis and Sylvia having a real marriage. We had like Travis and like Shinobu like establishing like a real kind of like mentor student relationship, right? We have, characters like Kamui coming out of nowhere. Like we have like this feeling that like No More Heroes, the world is kind of like expanding and kind of becoming its own thing more than it was originally intended to be. And like that in and of itself is kind of a magical realization is that like No More Heroes 2 in a lot of ways is the beginning of the expanded universe of No More Heroes. It's no longer just about Travis. It's about Shinobu. It's about Destroy Man. It's about like these characters that have like a bigger role in the story than can be foreshadowed, like that than you originally thought. Like it is crazy to think, like how attached I've become to I've gotten to Shinobu over the years, right? Like it's crazy how much like I I feel more of a you know I feel more emotionally invested in Sylvia's like dialogue tr tracks in No More Heroes 2, where she's like sitting in the booth and like talking about like the killers. Like you really get this sense that like they're going for something a little bit different here. They're not building up the killers necessarily, because this is a critique of No More Heroes 2, is that like the killers don't have a lot of dialogue and a lot of interesting interaction with Travis, but like it's more about the characters that were already established. Like we get some surprisingly emotional lines from Sylvia. We get Travis and Sylvia like being together at the end, right? After everything she did to him and like or did to each other, I suppose. Like after everything, like they do get married and they do have this incredibly dysfunctional relationship. And yeah, in a way they kind of deserve each other, right? They're two incredibly toxic people who for whatever reason decided to get married and have a family. And it's ridiculous, but that's kind of what makes it work. That's kind of what makes it endearing. That's what makes it unique. That's what makes it special. That's what makes No More Heroes 2, in a lot of ways, a very distinct entry in the No More Heroes games. I think with 3, especially, like now that we can no longer simply like compare No More Heroes 2 with the original, like we can kind of see, like we can kind of respect how different each of these games actually are, how they have a completely different vision, how they have a completely different perspective, how they like portray characters in different ways, how characters grow and evolve as the games go on, how like the dynamics between characters change, how like how ridiculous things get, right? Like there's so much to talk about in any given situation that I personally like playing No More Heroes 2. Like I have kind of reestablished myself as a No More Heroes fan. Like I've always loved the games, right? Like I've always been like a big advocate for this series, but like I think in a lot of ways I kind of bought into like my own hysteria. Like, like when Travis Strikes Again got shit on by like the general public, I was trying to tell people that like, oh, it's better than No More Heroes 2 because of this. And I stand by that assertion. Like I love Travis Strikes Again, but like when I look at like No More Heroes 2, like I feel like in a lot of ways I undersold the value of the game to myself. And I feel like in that sense, it's one of those like traps that you get into when you get like really deep into this nerd stuff, when you talk about like, oh, but Sylvia has this line of dialogue where she implies that she actually cares about Travis. Like, like what does it mean? Like when you go like deep into like the lore of this kind of stuff, it's really obvious. It's really like easy, I think, to kind of lose track of the big picture that like, is the game good or not? And when it comes to No More Heroes 2, like, yes, it is good. Like, in spite of what everyone says, in spite of like the narratives lobbied against it, including by myself, like, in spite of everything, like, I really enjoy No More Heroes 2. I think it has a lot of personality, a lot of great things going for it. Like, my favorite waifu and all of like in all the entire franchise, Margaret Moonlight. Like, it has so many positive aspects to it. Like it's the best looking game in the series. Like it has like multiple weapons that you can switch to on the fly. Like it has like some really cool like it has like some really good like one-liners and cutscenes and just like I just adore No More Heroes 2. Like I've always been iffy on it in the sense that like it's not as good as the first game, but after playing 3 and seeing the reception to it, like I feel like in a lot of ways people were rather harsh towards 2 as well. Like playing No More Heroes 3 day one, doing that like massive 10-hour stream, like going through the entire thing, like realizing just how like unfairly people were treating the game even then. Like for me, it's I think that No More Heroes really deserves a lot more credit than it actually deserves. I think people really need to start considering the series like on par with or better than Devil May Cry, you know, Onimusha, like these traditional like Japanese action games, right? Like I think No More Heroes has more personality and above all better lore and continuity than like any of them. Like these are an exceedingly well-made trilogy of games, and I am tired of people trying to downplay them or and make excuses for why they will never play these masterpieces.